Welcome back everybody to Property Couple. My name is AK.
I'm Leah, and this is our channel where we document property investing, business and working together as a couple. In today's video, we wanted to introduce you to Colin, who's going to answer everything you need to know about planning permission in the UK.
And I'm really glad that he's actually going to go through it with you, because there needs to be people out there that do this sort of thing, because it's very specialist. So here's our conversation with Colin. We hope you enjoy it.
So we're just going to kick it off with one of the most frequently asked questions, which is, how much does it cost to apply for planning permission in the UK?
That depends on what you're doing. Essentially, it will range from the smallest application fee, which is like 150 quid for a certificate of lawful use, all the way up to 300 quid per unit if you're going for a development. The average for a householder application is around 230 quid. But when you start dividing into flats and apartments, then you're looking up to 300, 350 quid per unit dwelling. So if you go for 10 units, for instance, it's about $3,500. So it varies depending on your scheme.
And I suppose as well, that might not include the fee that you would pay to the architect as well.
Definitely not. That is solely the local authority fee. So, when it comes to planning, there are a number of layers in which you've got to pay fees. So you'll pay the designer, the architect for the planning fee. You may need a consultant in terms of noise assessment or flood risk or bat survey, ecology survey. So you will end up paying fees for them. And then you have a local authority fee as well. So it's not just the one fee to the council that you'll be paying. You will be paying other consultancy fees along the way as well.
And really, that fee that you are paying for the council, what is that covering?
That's literally covering them and their services to assess your planning application. So simply, it's the resources that council can commit to making a decision on your application.
And how long do these decisions usually take, just from your experience?
So when you submit your application, the council will always take 1 to 2 weeks to validate it so it's on their system. From validation date, it should be normally 8 weeks. If it's a major application of around 10 or 11 units or more, then it goes up to 12 weeks. But it doesn't mean that it will be dead fast made a decision in that timescale, because it can be extended. And sometimes, in fact, quite a lot at the moment, they're actually asking for what's called an extension of time. That means it allows them to still make a decision with the acceptable time limit, but it goes over the original time limit they gave you.
Can you appeal planning?
Absolutely. So you have a right to appeal. Now, the process is, once you've had a refusal, you have a certain time period, depending on the type of application, to submit an appeal to the planning inspectorate. You can actually do it yourself, although generally your architect will prepare the information and submit it for you. But the planning inspectorate will take your application, knowing that you've appealed the decision, and they will review that. They will go out to the project, they'll go out to the site to assess it, and then make their own decision based on what they feel is the correct policy. And I've had a number of applications where I got refused at planning and I won on appeal. So yes, you can appeal it. Timescales for appeal can be absolutely anything. They never put a time limit on there. So you just need to be prepared. You could be waiting 3, 6, 9 months for an appeal decision.
And I'm guessing it's not free to appeal.
No, it is. Yeah, you'll probably pay your fee to the architect to prepare it, to submit it for you. I would advise you that you do that. But when you actually make an appeal to the planning inspectorate, there's no fee.
I guess a lot of people might have thought this. What happens if you go ahead and do your build, your project, without planning permission?
You are running a very high risk. If you build without planning permission, then you are building prior to any permissions that are that you're given from the council, which means that if you built it and you were refused retrospective planning permission, they could force you to knock it down. If you were to build it, and let's say you're doing a house extension or something, and really it falls within the permitted development rights, for instance, then the risk is very low, because you can then get retrospective permission for that, because you're really doing a PD build essentially on your house. But if you're starting to build separate dwellings, so for instance, if you've got a building in your back garden and you convert it into a flat or a masonette or something like that, and that could be contrary to planning policy, you're running a very high risk, because it's a very different proposition for the council to consider. So I'd advise you don't build or refurbish without permission first.
For anyone that doesn't know what permitted development is,
In terms of PD and permitted development, you have a right as a homeowner to extend your home in a number of different ways, but it has to be a house. It can't be a flat. It can't be any leasehold property like a flat or an apartment. It has to be a house, whether it's detached or semi-detached or terrace. You still have a right to extend it. So things like single-story rear extensions, loft conversions, garden rooms in the back for a studio, things like this are allowable, but there's certain limits that you can only go to. So you will be able to extend from the rear wall of your house up to 3 meters, depending on the type of property, up to 4 meters on others. And with prior approval, another layer of confusion, but again, PD applies, you can go even up to 8 meters on some applications and some properties. So PD is your right. It's a different type of application. It's not a full planning application, but it is works you can do without the need for full planning permission.
So once somebody has got planning permission approved, can it then later be like rejected or like redacted?
No. Once it's set, it's set. So if it's been approved, that's it.
Another question, Cole, is what is a planning condition?
Whenever you get planning approval, there's always conditions that come with the approval itself. So you'll have your approval confirmed by the council, and as an added attachment to the permission, you've got a condition, and there could be a number of conditions. Now, generally, the main condition that applies to all applications, you will always have this, is that it must be begun within 3 years of approval. So from the date of the approval, you have to start the works within 3 years. But they can vary a lot across lots of different landscapes in terms of the condition type. There's certain other conditions that you might have to do. It might be electric charging points, for instance. Some properties or developments, you're not allowed to actually rent them out or sell them or occupy them until electric charging point is put in, for instance. So the conditions are attached. You'll always see them when it comes to the approval coming through. You just got to check them. The condition is attached to the planning permission. It's things that you just have to abide by.
And with the condition that's often seen about starting within 3 years, does that mean you also need to be finished in 3 years, or do you just need to start?
Just need to start. I've had clients that will get their permission, just put the footings in, and that's it.
Right.
For years, yeah. But you started it. So as long as you started it, that constitutes that you've started the project, and therefore you could take whatever time you need to then finish it. If you've got a planning permission, you haven't started it yet, and you're still within 3 years, but you still want to do it, but it's about to lapse, start the work. Even if you put a shovel in the ground, or you can prove something to show that you've started the work, you can then say that you've actually started on site something, right? And have some proof of that.
I'm finding it funny, the idea of someone putting a shovel in the ground and then taking a picture of it and sending it to the council.
Honestly, it's the thing is, it's all about how you perceive it, right? But if you've effectively started the work and you've dug a hole, you've started your footings.
Cool. This is a bit of a classic one, but how would somebody apply for planning permission in the UK?
Essentially, there's a website called the Planning Portal. I do everything through the Planning Portal. It's public information, so you can go on there. And in fact, it's a really useful tool and place to go for people to look up building regs, building control, permitted development rights. They do some brilliant interactive little things on there to understand how you can extend your home under PD. So go to the Planning Portal. It's well worth having a look. But I use the Planning Portal, but really useful website to go to.
Yeah, especially if you're learning about property. I've noticed that just going on the planning portal and stalking other applications, you actually learn so much by just reading the back and forth on the planning portal.
Yep.
I know this is probably a question that you get all the time, but how long does the process take, sort of from application to permission granted?
It depends the size of the project. So if it's a minor development, you're looking at 8 weeks for a decision. So generally, if you appointed me, for instance, say on a small project, let's say you're doing a conversion property to a care home or something, you're going to look at around probably 4 weeks for a scheme design to get the application ready, 4 to 6 weeks. That will then go to the council. They'll take 1 to 2 weeks to validate. And then from validation, generally, it should take 8 weeks or so for a decision. You're looking at a period of 4 to 6 weeks for preparation, a week or two for validation, then 8 weeks for decision.
Why are councils not necessarily putting more emphasis on projects where, you know, it's going to provide housing into the local area, for example, you know, whether it be something like an HMO or apartments or anything like that? What's your sort of take on that?
It's a great question, right? It's a brilliant question. And I wish I did know the answer in full, but there's so much red tape and bureaucracy with the planning process, because the councils are then making a decision that will change the landscape. You know, it will affect people that live in the countryside, that there's a development going up, it's upsetting them, but it could be considered a brownfield site. You have to develop it because it's an opportunity for the council to meet their housing quota. HMOs have a stigma about the type of tenants that live there, right? So HMOs are considered affordable housing. You go to Camden, the waiting list for a council house there is plus 25 years. And the councils are fighting all these policies. And when they make a decision, there's always somebody that's not happy. There's a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy. They're trying to even simplify the system because we've got such a big housing quota to meet, but it just takes so much time. And to change the planning process will be enormous. I don't know. There's no real cut and shut answer to it, but we all know we need housing. We know that the demand is growing. HMOs aren't that bad if they're run and managed and refurbished well, but there is a stigma to a lot of type of development. So it's just how we have to manage it and play the part and go through the process.
Another question is, what is the difference between listed building consent and planning permission?
If anyone watching this video wants to take on a listed building, I would advise them don't, because there's a lot more that goes into a listed building than a traditional planning application. So planning application is the formal process. You have to do that whether it's listed building in a conservation area. Planning permission is the only process to go through to get what you want at the end, whether that's an extension, a conversion, a new development, whatever it is. That council that you're working with, you have to do the normal procedure for a planning application. If it's a listed building, you are then adding another layer of application where you have to have listed buildings consent. This then brings in something called English heritage. English heritage are there to protect buildings. So although you might have a listed building over here and you want to convert it into this, that's great. You've got your planning permission, but that listed building will be so well protected by English heritage, they will be all over you to make sure you do it certain ways. And the cost of listed building conversions, for instance, or developments is much, much higher than conventional property conversions because they're looking to protect certain aspects or nearly all the aspects of that building. People get attracted to listed buildings. We've got some amazing buildings in England and the UK. Right, we've got some beautiful buildings and properties that people want to bring back into life that maybe have been neglected, but they come at a cost. So you need to be prepared for that. So I think if you're watching this video and you want to go into maybe development or investment or something, listed buildings shouldn't be the first on your list. That should be later on down the line.
I understand that with listed buildings, there's a scale of how listed it is. For instance, like a grade 1 listed building like Buckingham Palace compared to a grade 2 star or a grade 2.
Yeah.
If you were sort of looking at a lower grade listed building, would it be a little bit easier to navigate the process, or are you still sort of in the same territory of this is going to be expensive and I will say
you're all in the same territory. Every listed building is with English heritage.
Okay, I'm with you.
Single listed building, because it's English heritage that will decide to list that building and protect it. All right.
Okay.
So they're all with English heritage. But I remember I was working with a client who had a grade 2 listed building, and it was in Liverpool, beautiful building. And it was, he wanted to convert it to apartments. He had planning approval to do it. The only listed element of it was the liver bird. You know, the Liverpool football badge has a liver bird on it. Yeah,
yes.
There was a statue of that right on the corner of the building that was put up originally, God knows how many hundreds of years ago. That was the only element that was listed because the rest was actually falling apart and in disarray. So they listed that element because it was designed and constructed by a certain person at the time. Wow. So the whole development wasn't constrained by the listed status. It was only that one section they needed to preserve. So you might find there's buildings out there that have a listed status, but only part of it is actually protected. The rest, you know, you can do what you essentially want with it. So it's just about understanding what the building is listed for. The reason I'm always concerned with it is that it is a criminal offence to do anything to a listed building without permission. So, and it comes with heavy fines. So it does take a bit of experience to be able to take one on.
And when it comes to listed buildings and planning permissions and things, if a building is really seriously beyond repair, is that one way perhaps that you can get what you want out of it?
Yes and no, because if you was to refurbish the building and bring it back into, you know, life essentially and bring it back up, they will make you do it how it originally was. Which means that you may have to have the original trades that would do lead-lined drainage pipes, lead-lined guttering. It could be masonry, stonework, you know, that they won't let you just go and get a brickie to come and do that. You need a specialist that's been registered and actually certified to do it in the correct way, that's, you know, not changed for hundreds of years. So it is still very much a heavy duty on your part to be able to still do that. So it comes with its warnings, really.
They don't make them like they used to, right, Cole?
They don't make them right.
But exactly, but they're still here 400 years later. You know, when I was in Oxford, I went to a couple of pubs and Shakespeare used to sit in them. It's great. Yeah.
Awesome.
Quality.
Yeah. So cool. Well, thanks so much for all of that info. That was so helpful, and we really hope that if you're watching this video, you got a lot of value out of that, because we certainly did.
Definitely.
Colin, we're going to leave your information in the description of this video for anybody who has a project and they want to chat to you and find out more and maybe get the ball rolling on a project if you've got time.
Yeah, it'd be great to be able to spend some time with you guys and share what I know.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Cole.
Cheers, Cole.
See ya.
Speak to you next time. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch that. I hope you learnt as much as we did as well, talking to Colin there.
And please let us know in the comments below if you enjoy these informative style of videos where we speak to an expert, because it's something we definitely want to do more on our channel. We'd like to host conversations with the experts in the industry, especially people in our team as well that have helped us so much get to where we are today. So please let us know if you enjoyed that. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. It's completely free, and we will see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.